Sometimes I start out the first 5 by telling you a little story and kind of tying it into what we want to talk about today. But I want to start out first, the first 5, by saying 4 weeks from today is the election, the November 3rd, 2020 presidential elections. Entire Congress is up, as you well know, about a third of the Senate and the presidency of the United States. 4 weeks from today. Many people are saying that this is a turnout election. And in many cases, that is true. Both sides are working very hard to get their base to turn out. They've been working registering voters, or in some cases, registering illegal people who shouldn't really be voting, but I digress. Pushing with the idea that it is a turnout election. And it is, except for this fact. There is an effort, an ongoing, relentless, day-by-day effort of the Democrat media mob in this country to try to turn people away from support for President Trump. They use all sorts of tactics, all sorts of labels, all sorts of just twisting of facts. And I want to talk about that, about this idea of saving America, because what really is going on in 2020 is an election between preserving America as founded, rooted in the foundational liberties spelled out in our Declaration of Independence, and moving forward with a nation that still respects the rule of law, the constitutional structure of our government, the rights guaranteed in our Bill of Rights. It's that America that has made us a capitalist, free market America. It is that America that has made us safe, prosperous, and moved our country to be where we are today, which is the leader of liberty in the world. Or the other choice is over the cliff to a country that you will not recognize in a few short years. It's a country moving towards socialism, a country where the rights spelled out in the Bill of Rights are treated more as suggestions, a country where the constitutional structure of government, the separation of powers, the rule of law, will be a vague, confusing, nebulous mess. But I want to focus in particular in the first 5 today on what the voters, what the Democrat media mob tries to do in turning people away from President Trump. So here's just my little story. So yesterday I happened to talk to a friend after I left the show. She was saying, well, you know, I've always voted Republican, and I agree with the Republicans, but I don't think that President Trump should have left Walter Reed Hospital and gotten into the limousine and driven around the hospital to wave to the crowds who were there supporting him, because he may have put Secret Service in danger. I mean, that is just not the action of a responsible person. You don't, when you know you have coronavirus, you're supposed to stay secluded. So he shouldn't have done that. So we had a conversation, and I went through some points I would talk to her about, but I'm just using this as an example of the idea, a tactic the left uses, and you have to be alert to it, which is they try to find one little thing that might make you angry, might make you question the president, might make you think question his judgment or his decision on some issue, or the way he spoke, or what he put in a tweet. And then they want to say to you, because I've now convinced you of this one thing, and you're agreeing with me that he shouldn't have done this or he shouldn't have said that, clearly you can't support him. People, we cannot get pushed off our game of preserving this country because somebody points out something that you may even strongly agree with that you think the president shouldn't have done, shouldn't have said. That's point number 1. Don't let them play that game with you. Be smarter than that. Even if you want to say, yes, I absolutely agree that he should have stayed in that hospital room and quarantined for 14 days, even if that's what you think. That has nothing to do with preserving this country and moving this country forward. That's number 1. Number 2, there is a lot of attack on what President Trump had to say, both in a tweet as well as in his verbal remarks after he came back, leaving Walter Reed Hospital and heading back to the White House. I sent Matt the Wonderful, who is indeed back. Yay, Matt is back. So Matt the Wonderful has a short clip from a tweet. This is what President Trump, just a short clip of his remarks as he came back to the White House.
I just left Walter Reed Medical Center, and it's really something very special. The doctors, the nurses, the first responders, and I learned so much about coronavirus. And one thing that's for certain, don't let it dominate you. Don't be afraid of it. You're going to beat it. We have the best medical equipment. We have the best medicines, all developed recently. And you're going to beat it. I didn't feel so good. And 2 days ago, I could have left 2 days ago. 2 days ago, I felt great, like better than I have in a long time. I said just recently, better than 20 years ago. Don't let it dominate. Don't let it take over your lives. Don't let that happen. We have the greatest country in the world. We're going back. We're going back to work. We're going to be out front.
Okay, I could tell you, folks, his remarks right there he's talking about triggered the left to near hysteria. I will spare you putting up so you can see some of the text messages and tweets that went out, just hysterical attack on the president. How dare he tell people not to be afraid? This is disrespectful to the people who lost their lives to COVID or who lost loved ones. No, it's not. And I want to remind you the famous words about fear, not being afraid, not being fearful, which have been revered for generations. We had FDR making the comments in 1933 where he said this great nation will endure as long as it has endured, will revive, will prosper. And he goes on to say, let me assert my firm belief that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. People used to love that. Democrat media mob used to love that because they recognized what FDR was helping people understand. Of course, we are facing a dangerous world. Of course, there are things that we might have challenges in front of us, and they might be really big challenges. Of course, we may actually have military conflict and lose lives. He wasn't saying, don't be fearful, everything's going to be perfect. He was pointing out we can't live in fear. And the reason the left is driven so insane by what Trump said is because what they've hoped ever since they had the coronavirus situation arise in America is that the left thrives on and gains power from the fear, the amount of fear the American people feel. And this is why the left was so triggered by what Trump said, because he's telling them, hey, I've been through it. You know, it's not wonderful. It's not great. But we don't have to fear. We can get through this. The left does not want you to think that. The left wants the American people to think, and that, I always remind my friend always says, say the anti-American left. The anti-American left does not want the American people to think that we can get through this without massive fear, continued shutdown, a shutdown of our economy, our society, our social order, our churches, our lives, our businesses. The left thrives on fear. They get power. The more the American people are afraid, the more they will act like sheep instead of individual Americans. The left gains power over them. The left is hysterical mostly because President Trump dared to point out, let's not be fearful. So, number two in President Trump, they attack him all the time, trying to get you angry with him. This is a great example where he said he made remarks akin to among the most famous remarks in American history about don't fear, or fear itself is a problem, and the left is triggered. And then, so I won't even read their tweets, but I do want to make one other point just generically about the election cycle as I close out the first five, and we're talking here about, Trump and saving America. This is a Save America election. You can't get hung up on voting for the man, Trump, versus the man, Biden. I don't care if you like President Biden better, Vice President Biden better. I don't care if you think he's a nicer person. What his party will do to this country is destroy it. It doesn't matter if he seems nicer to you. What matters is what the parties stand for, what the agenda is the individual candidate is running on. You've seen the Trump agenda. You've seen prosperity. You've seen strength returning to America. You've seen in America a newly restored sense of love of America, strength of America under President Trump. You've seen this survival, this fighter attitude that was so great to hear from President Trump as he left Walter Reed Hospital. And you hear from the left, the radical leftist agenda that is in the streets of our cities, that is never denounced by anyone, including Biden, barely can denounce Antifa or Black Lives Matter or Marxism or socialism. He can't do it because that is his party. I'll make one analogy to you for closing out this first five. People have jobs in professional sports, NFL, NBA, baseball, all that. And the job is called scouting. They go out and they find talent. And so when they find someone, they bring him back and say, yep, this is the person that we think you should try out and you should consider for quarterback or the pitcher or the center, whatever the sport is. They don't go find the nicest person. They don't go find the person who does not offend them by their manner of speaking or by their tweets or by their hairstyle or even by their personal life history. They find the person who can do the job. Do the job. That is the reason the scouts have a job. They're supposed to come back and say, yeah, this is the guy, this is the one who can be the quarterback and win games for us, or the pitcher, or the center, or whatever the position is in any sport. They're out to get the best person for the job. Well, that's the same job you have in this election cycle. Pick the person who will keep America on track as a free, prosperous, noble nation, as a strong nation rooted in liberty, a strong nation that protects the rights guaranteed to us in the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. That's what your job is. You're like the scout for the NFL. You're finding the best person for the job, not the person who you like the best or you think has the best manners. Because if we went down that route, who knows? We might have had Mitt Romney or someone like that who clearly has no fight in him. But where we ended up, because the American people saw through the attacks on President Trump in 2016, we ended up with a man taking the presidency who is putting this country back on track. We've got to do exactly the same thing in this election cycle. Choose the man who can do the job. And that, my very fine friends, is today's First Five.